Hello and welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays. Today we're talking about, ta-da, wisdom. You didn't see that one coming, did you? There's a whole little section on it of scripture verses about it in the Proverbs that I'm going to read through for you. This is Proverbs 3 verses 13 through 18, and it goes like this. Joyful is the person who finds wisdom, the one who gains understanding. For wisdom is more profitable than silver, and her wages are better than gold. Wisdom is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. She offers you long life in her right hand and riches and honor in her left. She will guide you down delightful paths. All her ways are satisfying. Wisdom is a tree of life to those who embrace her. Happy are those who hold her tightly. Isn't that nice? It's a really nice section, but for our purposes, we're just going to focus in on two of those verses, easier to memorize and meditate on, right? And I think these two verses kind of boil that whole section down. So it's chapter 3, verse 13 and verse 18. And here's what they say. Joyful is the person who finds wisdom, the one who gains understanding. Wisdom is a tree of life to those who embrace her. Happy are those who hold her tightly. In our culture, we're pretty much in love with being cool, aren't we? And you know, I am so old that I use the word cool, and it's probably not even the right word anymore. I was at a party recently when someone about my age said that he was being hip, and I laughed at him and said, I think if you call yourself hip, it's evidence that you're old. So does saying cool, I'm pretty sure. I bet there's a trendier word to describe it, but that's what we're really kind of into in this culture, isn't it? We spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of dollars working toward creating the right impression for others around us. Some do this by working really hard to fit in, and others do so by being what I would call too cool for school. I think that's maybe an old saying, which is we thumb our noses at the people who are trying so hard to fit in. We're too cool to try to fit in. Either way, most of us are really practicing image management more often than not. And wisdom is different than coolness. Wisdom is not image management. I was looking for a set of definitions for the word wisdom, and actually the ones I like the best come from a dictionary that is for English language learners. So I guess that boils it down to the nut of it, right? Listen to these definitions. Wisdom is knowledge that is gained by having many experiences in life. That's one. Wisdom is the natural ability to understand things that most other people cannot understand. Another definition says wisdom is knowledge of what is proper or reasonable. And finally, another definition says wisdom is good sense or judgment. And I think Jesus followers would also want to add that wisdom, true wisdom, lines up with God's principles and God's directives. The promise in today's scriptures are really great, so we're just going to read through them again so you can hear that and get it in your mind. Joyful is the person who finds wisdom, the one who gains understanding. Wisdom is a tree of life to those who embrace her. Happy are those who hold her tightly. Did you hear those words? Joyful, happy, a tree of life. Those are things I want. I think we're reminded of these promises because they're kind of counterintuitive when it comes to wisdom, at least for some of us. Gaining wisdom can be so painful. It can involve choosing wrong and learning. That's been my favorite way, unfortunately, of gaining wisdom. Or it can involve choosing rightly and along the way probably feeling like we're maybe missing out on things that other people get to do that look fun. And dealing with the pain of that missing out feeling and just choosing to do right anyway. So either way, gaining wisdom, doesn't always feel good in the process of gaining it. In other words, some of the processes by which we gain wisdom aren't things that most of us hope to experience, holding on to the promise that as we choose wisdom, happiness and joy will follow. Not necessarily a fun proposition, just a worthwhile one. And I'm going to tell you that I have experienced this principle firsthand, and I'm just going to testify. After a lifetime of managing my romantic relationships my way, and rather than God's way, and suffering some really painful consequences for myself and for others around me with that approach, I gave up. And I just decided I'm going to do a relationship God's way, following God's principles, and I'm going to do that even if it means I'm going to die single, even if it means I've been on my last date already. And 15 years of celibate singlehood with mostly no hope in sight was hard. Not going to lie, it was hard. But when Gary and I got together, we both decided that we would manage this relationship by God's principles, and we discovered the truth of these promises. I had no idea that this much happiness was possible. I am still kind of daily stunned by it. I'm regularly stunned at the amount of joy in my marriage. I often say to Gary, or about Gary when he's not around, that he is the smartest choice I have ever made. And I attribute all of that almost completely to the fact that we followed God's wisdom at every step of the journey in bringing this relationship together and in guiding it even now. Perfectly? No. Chasing as hard as we can to follow God's principles? Yeah. And the promises, I can testify, that come with the wisdom are worth the pain of gaining the wisdom. Before I go, let's just do those 2 verses 3 times, just to start getting them into our memory, as always. So are you ready? Joyful is the person who finds wisdom, the one who gains understanding. Wisdom is a tree of life to those who embrace her. Happy are those who hold her tightly. And again, joyful is the person who finds wisdom, the one who gains understanding. Wisdom is a tree of life to those who embrace her. Happy are those who hold her tightly. And one more time. Joyful is the person who finds wisdom, the one who gains understanding. Wisdom is a tree of life to those who embrace her. Happy are those who hold her tightly. That's all for now. Go forth, have a great week, go forward seeking godly wisdom and knowing that it will be worth the cost, even when it feels like it's pretty darn expensive. Have a blessed week.